Hopefully this will work. We welcome back Viraj to talk about his career in consulting.
Thanks, Mark. Hey everyone, this is Viraj here. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and talk through some of the stuff that I wanted to discuss today. So just give me a second. All right, can everyone see my screen and like a presentation that I have up?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm gonna give a fair warning that I just have a one-slide presentation, unlike Umar. Like I don't really have a ton of slides, but I can talk through this one, and hopefully you guys find something interesting, something that you can relate to, and happy to take questions at the end. So just really quickly, right? I graduated Bentley doing my master's in information in technology in 2016. Before that, I had an undergrad computer science degree back in India. And after, during my like MSIT at Bentley, I did an internship with a company called as CenturyLink, where I worked a little bit on cloud, AWS, and like some of the Salesforce and like some of the other offerings that CenturyLink had. Graduated in 2016 and then started with PwC as an associate, and being a senior associate in the last 2 years after I got promoted and working in the advisory practice of that. So I guess just throwing a little bit more light on, you guys can obviously see the screen, but I guess the kind of projects, again, consulting is like a really big world, and especially when you talk about Big Four or some of these companies, there are like literally endless possibilities in terms of like the kind of work that you can do. And I would like to point out, like when you start your career at PwC or like any of these consulting companies, right? It's a little bit trickier in the beginning because you don't really know like what to expect, what kind of projects are going to be there, what you really enjoy doing, or like what is something that you're really good at, or what you don't like doing. So you need to give it a little bit more time, like a year, 2 year, 3 years, something like that. Once you kind of get a couple of projects under your belt, that's when you really start kind of realizing, okay, this is something that I'm good at. This is something that I enjoy doing more over the other stuff, and like whatnot, right? So I feel like one of the advantages of being in consulting is like it exposes you a lot more to like the different kind of work that is out there, as opposed to maybe like any of the other traditional companies, right? Like because when you sign up for like as under a particular role or title, right, you usually end up working on that particular sector or like that particular kind of work for most time. But I think one of the advantages of being in consulting is like you get exposed to a fairly different number of things, and then that way you can start aligning your interests. Like, okay, you know what, like I like the healthcare sector more, or like there is like this energy sector, like like Tesla doing cool stuff and whatnot. I want to like pivot more towards that. So, and again, in the initial years of consulting, sometimes it's harder because you don't really have a lot of power in terms of what projects you get placed on, and that's why I said when you start with these companies, you have to give it like a year or 2 years just to kind of start figuring out what you're really good at and start pushing yourself more towards the kind of stuff that you like to do. So with that said, I'm just going to pause over here for a second to see if any of that resonates with what you guys are thinking, and do you have any questions so far? Or if not, I can talk a little bit more about some of the work that I've done on the projects and some of my experience from Bentley that came in handy. But I'm just going to pause over here for a second to see if anybody has any questions.
So thank you for sharing like your experience. So I find myself really related to what you're doing. So I have a background, also work for one of the Big Four, but then I'm moving from auditing to more like business analytics, and I started to be very interested in coding and learning computer science. So I wonder, like in your position as a consultant in one of the Big Four, is your job related to like writing a program, or like what is that actually is, like, so I can know like what a consultant actually do?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for that question. So I think that alludes to the point that I made earlier, right? It really depends on what kind of engagement or project you get placed on. So, obviously when you apply to any company, you're probably going to be applying to 1 or 2 or 3 positions, right? So you do get hired under like a specific position. But having said that, there's a lot more mobility internally in terms of like, okay, you know what, like, and again, I'm not saying this is going to happen right away, right? I mean, it does take a little bit of time, but you can start talking to your coach or your relationship leaders, or basically like, people who are kind of like responsible for your scheduling in the company, right? And tell them about your interests and like, what you think you're going to do and whatnot. And that way they can start aligning your next engagements or project more so to, let's say, you're less interested in coding, you want to transfer more towards like the finance side of things, you want to go tax, audit, or like the other way around. Like, we have consistently seen a lot of people coming in with like finance or like, I mean, Big Four, I mean, PwC at the end of the day is like primarily an accounting kind of firm, right? So we have seen a lot of people traditionally like who have accounting or finance background or like masters even in some of those subjects. But then over the couple of years, they transition more towards the advisory side of things or the technology side of things. And I think they actually bring in a ton of value because they really understand the business, they really understand some of these auditing or tax nuances that are out there, and then they also have interest in technology. They pick up on like any of those skills like SQL or Alteryx or anything that the company is adopting at that time, and basically like pivot their career the way they want. So I think there's a lot of flexibility. Again, not to say that that would happen overnight, but to your question, you apply to a certain position, understanding what the requirements are and feeling that you might be a good fit. But as you come in and let's say you feel that there's something else that might probably interest you a little bit more, there is always a room to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So just a follow-up question on that. So when you said that you are have worked on a couple projects, and is there any project that you work on using any like programming skills, like learning like a specific programming language that you have to use in your project?
So I would say, I think, this is kind of where some of my Bentley experience really helped me, right? So some of the courses that I had already taken, specifically answering from a technology point of view, having that hands-on experience in SQL, in Python to an extent, or even like Tableau. I think those were some of the tools or like skills that I had to use on some of these projects, and obviously there's a learning curve, even though you have studied them academically, when you actually have to use them in a project or in an existing client environment, there is always a little bit of learning curve. But so I didn't really have to learn a new technology per se, but I did have to use these technologies that I had kind of like interfaced with in my Bentley experience.
That's good. That's great. I think that's what I hope to work on if I ever land into some same position, because I hope that I can work in between business field but also using technology in those business knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really depends on like the kind of projects that you end up being staffed on. I mean, I know, again, the company is so huge. I know we have projects which are hardcore development projects, a lot to like what Omar was alluding earlier, following the whole SDLC life cycle, where we have internally PwC is developing products that we market, and you have like you follow the agile methodology, you have people who do sprints, product owner and whatnot. And then you again, you have people, who are absolutely not doing any sort of coding, just project management on a really high level. And then you have like a mix of both, where you need to use tools and technology every now and then. But it's not like you're constantly coding or developing something. So, you have to find your right balance. And obviously not every project is going to be the best project that you ever wanted to work on, because, there's the staffing doesn't work that way. So you have to be open to, work on different things and kind of accept what comes to your way, right? Does that help?
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome, cool. any more questions on this before I just like talk through some more points that I had to cover? Cool. So I think again I've listed this over here, but just some of the projects on a really high level, that I wanted to talk about, just to give everyone like a sense of what are some of the projects that we do, so that you can see, like, if you see yourself doing that kind of work, maybe if that interests you, or maybe saying like, I absolutely do not get what these guys are doing, and maybe PwC is not the company for me, right? And again, this is limited to what my experience has been with the firm. I've only been with the firm for 4 years, so people with a lot more experience will have a lot more different things on their canvas. But some of the projects on a high level that I've worked on are the first one being the like risk and regulatory compliances. So what that means is, you're essentially going to be like working on a client where you check their existing, infrastructure, you check their existing controls and systems in place, and see if all of those metrics are kind of like compliant to the way they need to be from like an SEC perspective. If let's say if it's a financial company, do they have the right level of controls on their data, when they're doing data migration, data transformation, or when they're doing any of those business processes, are they compliant to what the standards are? So you basically evaluate a bunch of client controls and their architecture against the set standards. And you need to look at like a lot of different systems, their business flows, process flows, and basically recommend to the client like, hey, you know what, like the standards say this is how it should be, but you're not compliant, the system is failing, these controls are failing, and that's why you can get penalized by the government, or you can get penalized by some other bodies because you're not doing certain things a certain way. So these are some of the kind of projects that we do. So if that's something that you like doing, understanding the client infrastructure, architecture, and commenting on that, recommending on that, those are some of the projects. Some of the other projects that I worked on, which was the second point, was like healthcare data analysis, where we typically get like a large sets of data from our different healthcare, like if it's a payer or an insurance company, whatever that is, we analyze the data. We do some analysis in terms of like, okay, we think you're probably not going to get returns from some of these clients because they haven't like customers, because they haven't paid you over like 180 days or 360 days. So coming up with metrics, looking at their data, and basically saying what the data speaks, right, or where the data is trending. If this is something that or flag it to the client, saying like, hey, you know what, this person has defaulted 5 times, or he has a really bad credit score, so we are recommending that this is going to be a problem if you don't collect finances from them, or something like that, right? So those are some of the healthcare projects that we do. And then again, you obviously have a lot of system implementation or like data migration kind of projects where you come in as an expert, you come in as a consultant, and you're trying to like really understand the client's existing system or infrastructure, and then you basically like recommend them to a future state, which is where the client wants to move towards, and start designing a roadmap, milestones on like how that can be done, do some sort of testing, and basically ensure that from point A to point B, point B being the future state, that transition is smooth, and you can help them in that process. So, and those are some of the high level projects that I've worked on. And again, there's like a bunch of other stuff that I can speak on, but just wanted to pause over there again, and see if anybody had any specific questions on some of these things, or wanted to ask about some other kind of projects that maybe they have heard or seen at PwC.
Actually, I have a question. So,
Sure.
thank you for sharing your experiences first. And then my question is, so I'm just wondering, and I'm curious, like, how is the workload for a consultant at like a Big Four company? Is there
Sorry,
like
say that again. I missed a word in that. Say that again, please.
sorry. So like, how is the workload for like a consultant at a Big Four company? Is there like a peak season that you're very busy with projects or not?
So that's a good question, and that's a one that I get pretty commonly asked for. So if you are more on the finance side of things, so like tax or auditing, probably you you definitely have seasons, like, you have peak season or busy season, as we call them, which usually starts from November of any year to like March of the next year, when you have like financial, like FI year end, or like, Q3 end or Q4 end. So November to March, I would say, is like usually busier for people who are working in tax or audit kind of like departments. But then again, it largely depends on the kind of role or the kind of team that you're tagged to. In some people have busy season in this time frame. If you're in some other department, your work-life balance will be more distributed throughout the year and not just pocketed to a certain like months of the year. But having said that, I think one of the things that gets a little challenging in consulting is just, since most of the time you're based on like delivering certain things to the client, and you're billed by the hour, like you're kind of an expensive resource to the client, right? So the turnaround time for a lot of these things are quick. So I mean, sometimes you have like crazy deadlines, or sometimes you need to get a lot of work through. So I think that is like some of the things that where it starts getting challenging, is because it's not really like which month it's going to be more busy or less busy. At least for me, it's more so like when we get work or when we have to deliver certain things, because it's mostly client facing, or you have a certain commitment that you need to stick to, those things can get hard in terms of like turning it around quickly, right? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, awesome.
I have a question, please.
Sure.
Again, thank you for sharing. On my own side, I am struggling because I'm doing my master's on computer science, and I have a lot of experience in business, So what is it like for those of us that are not very strong in the tech side of things? And with what I'm learning today, I know I can get some things done, but I'm not very, very strong on my own to accomplish something in technically from it. What is it like opportunity for us out there?
I would say, and so we have a classic term for that, and you can Google it up. It's called as imposter syndrome. So if you look it up, you'll know what exactly that means. So you feel that you don't know enough, and that's a common thing among consultants. You feel you don't really know enough. How can you recommend a solution to somebody when you yourself are like not completely an expert on that subject, or you're starting something new, you're starting a new engagement. You always have that, I would say, sense of skepticism on how good you will be at it, right? So and that's constantly going to be there. I'll be honest, like when I started with the firm, I thought that this is just a temporary thing of like, okay, I don't really know like what I'm doing, or like how I'm going to be able to add value, and but this is going to fade away after 6 months or after a year. But that's not true, right? Like it's been almost 4.5 years for me. I'm working with PwC, but I think every new project that you start on, or every new kind of engagement where the work is a little different than what you've done before, you have that sense of like uncertainty, where you don't know, like, how much value you're going to be able to add, be it in terms of technology, be in terms of business, but I think the key is to take some of your like learnings and like cross learnings pretty much from like the other engagements that you have, and try to value add, like always ask questions, like always try to see a reason in what you're doing, right? Like I think that is the most important thing that you bring to table. Like when you come in with a like relatively less knowledge, you have a fresh perspective on things, right? So just because you're working with somebody as a manager or as a director or a partner, and obviously there's a right way to do that, right? You cannot hammer them with like just like constant questions. But what I'm saying is, like, if you have that curiosity, even if you don't know things, Google it up, be it business or tech, try to figure it out on your own and see, why are we doing it a certain way, and can it be done some other way? Nobody really expects you to know everything when you come in, and I can say that being here almost like 4.5 5 years, that when I was coming in, I was thinking, I don't really know this fully, but there's always room to ask questions, right? And that's what the whole learning is about. So do not like think less of yourself. Whatever background you have, that's good enough, and that's why they hired you. Just believe in yourself to like push yourself more and ask the right questions, and you'll add value that way.
Thank you very much.
Does that help?
Yeah, it means a lot to me. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Cool. I'm just going to give him one more minute to see if we have. I think we're getting some really good questions, and not a ton left that I have to cover. So we can take this a few more minutes if if there's something people that would like to ask and talk about.
So I'd like to just give a little bit of input from my side to Victor. What Viraj is saying is absolutely true about imposter syndrome. So sometimes you feel like you don't know what you're doing, or am I actually good at this, or will I be able to perform? And that's why I said stay curious. You're going to have to research some stuff. You're going to have to learn some stuff on the way. What I always say in university, you learn how to learn. So you are given the tools to be able to figure things out. And with experience, you'll be able to learn more, and you will be able to adapt a little bit more, and something that you've learned today might be useful tomorrow. So just have confidence, I would say. And I would say go with the flow. To add to that, I do ask, whenever I'm hiring someone, I ask a very interesting question, which is give me a problem and let me know how you resolved it. I do hire in the technical realm, and the reason I ask this, I want to figure out, is it a technical problem or is it a people problem? But my follow-up question is, how did you solve that? I want to be able to determine if the person in front of me will come to me for help if he needs it or not. And this is very important. It's okay to ask questions. And I think Viraj might be able to shed a light on that a little bit more. If he did feel he was in a pickle, he has people where he could rely on and ask some questions.
That's a fair point, Omar. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I think I don't remember an instance on top of my head, but as you were saying that, and I completely resonate to what you're saying, right? I think the real problems or the real challenges that you would encounter most of the times are like not technology, but people problem. And I'll give you a quick example, right? Let's say you're stuck trying to do something in Python or Java or whatever technology you're using. For most times, you can go on Stack Overflow, or you can just Google and try and see some sort of solution, that you can test out and see if that's working. So there is something that you can probably Google, but a lot of times where it gets really challenging is like the people problem, right? Like you are having some sort of like conflict or misunderstanding, or like challenging priorities, and you need to figure that out, right? With your director, with your partner, with the client, whoever the stakeholders are. There is no answer on Google how to do that, right? Like, what are you going to Google? Like, how to handle a client? Like, that's not going to give you a specific answer to your situation. So, and that comes with experience, and I think that's why it's the experience is valued, because some of the soft skills are like intangible. Like you can put things on your resume, you're certified, or you have this kind of certification, this technology or that technology, which is absolutely necessary. Sure, you need to know technologies, but at the same time, it's also very critical that you have that people component, critical thinking, and soft skills to deliver on some of these. And I'm sure Omar must be seeing a lot of this, in his daily role as a CIO or CTO, as he deals with a lot of different people, where he has to put like different hats and basically like, juggle between the expectations that, all of these different teams have. Right, Omar?
Yes, definitely. And as you mentioned, how do you deal with people? And this is a key indicator. It's a key thing or a key item that I've learned early on. And I think that also helped me in my career, especially. So just a very simple example. In my early career, I used to have to get approval for downtime for a whole business. So imagine the HR software, the software that the HR department uses to pay out payroll, and everything will be down for 3, 4, 5, even 6 hours. The tech team or the IT department always asks me, how are you able to get the approval of the downtime? And I always used to say, simple, I just asked. but
Right.
creating these interpersonal relationships with other employees, with other people, with the client, does go a long way. Being genuine also is key, to be honest. And as Viraj was mentioning, yes, with an interviewing people, yes, definitely. Jay here is our QA engineer, and I've asked him that question. And there's always something that you might hear. When you hire for personality, you don't hire for skill, because skill could be taught, but you hire for personality, and you hire for the ability for someone to gain experience, or for the ability for someone to gain any said skill set. So in my job in university, in Bentley, I studied Java, and I studied Android development based on Java. Later on, I started to pick up other programming languages for fun. But again, as I've mentioned, I haven't really written any code. The only couple times I've written code was to prove a point to a developer, because he told me this cannot be done, and I guess this can be done, and this is the process to do it. But at the end of the day, you might not be good at writing code, but you might be good at looking at an ERD and figuring out what is wrong with the database. So it's whenever we say computer science, or we say IT, or we say technology, it's not all about development. It's not about writing lines of code.
Right. Exactly.
Guys, I want to thank you both for your insights and your talk today. I want to ask the students to put, and everyone else to put your screens back on as we wrap up. I'm going to go around the room and ask for another couple of comments. And Viraj, if you can stop sharing so we can see everybody.
Yep.
Thank you. There everybody is. Nope. Now we see me.
Yep.
Now we see everybody else. Even better. Anybody have a last comment or a take-home message, or something that you'll think about after joining us today?
Yeah, I can go. I mean, for me, I think this is a great opportunity, just having these people talk about like their experience. And honestly, I have been freaking out, I'm not gonna lie, for the past 6 months since I started my graduate program, because I have a sport management undergrad and a little bit of business, but having to study tech, I feel like, oh, I need to know how to code, and I'm like here and there every time. But yeah, it is a relieving topic, I would say, to have people who are already experienced in the industry to share and give me this insight. I think now I feel much better about myself going into tech.
Glad to hear it. Thank you. Okay, well, I want to give a preview of next week's topic in tech. We have two speakers next week. They're both from Microsoft. Chris Bortlick and John Donahue both work at the Microsoft Innovation Center in Burlington, Massachusetts. And they'll be talking about the career path for the Microsoft career journey next week, and some of the technologies that they work with at the Innovation Center in Burlington. So that'll be next Wednesday at the same time. You'll probably get another email from me about that. So please plan to join. And please extend, if you found today's session worthwhile, please tell your friends to hop on Zoom and join you, so that we can keep sharing the work that Bentley alumni are doing. A big thanks to Omar and to Viraj and to you guys for coming today.